By the way, one thing I thought we could talk about, because it's another one of those like messy scenarios, is this Astralis situation. Because obviously at this tournament, like I said, dude, Astralis looked great. Like everything was looking awesome. Like basically, not only were the good players, like BlameF and Device basically do well all the time, but the Stair guy had like the tournament of his life thus far. Like he actually was popping off. The problem is though, we all know this isn't the real lineup, even though obviously it's going to play at Blast because of the way the roster lock worked. And now we're hearing this rumor, it just came out like the other day, that they are going to apparently finalize the deal and Yabby and Stown are going to come over to Astralis. So my question's going is, one, what for you, what is the point of the current Astralis? Like, how do you even frame them? Because to me, it's kind of like, I'll just say it straight up a minute. I don't really even think of them as like a team. I just watch BlameF and Device and go, I'm glad they're good. But like, when Yabby and Stown come, on paper, I think it's a messy roster, but there's some really good names there. There are going to be a lot of names in that lineup. So what do you think of current Astralis, and what do you envision for the next one? Like, are you excited about the prospect of the Yabby Stown Astralis?
I am. So the problem that I have is that I cannot dissociate the Counter-Strike, like the essential Counter-Strike, from all of the bullshit that's happening around it. I have a problem. I feel like it colors my opinion of it, right? I think on paper, when you bring Stabby, there we go, I did it. I said Stabby instead of Yabby and Stown. This is how much I'm programmed to it. This is the example right there. It's the proof is in the pudding. When you put Yabby and Stown with Device and BlameF as a quad core, you'd be stupid not to be excited by it. Like, it's just the amount of like power that there is in these players in different roles as well. It's like, holy hell. This is almost like the fourth best quad you could have in Denmark. I cannot really imagine 4 other players together that would be stronger than that, right? So on paper, I am very excited by this roster. I really hope that they can just clean and cleanse their mind from all of the shit that's happening around there and just focus on the Counter-Strike. That's step one. Now, the current Astralis, from a social/psychological standpoint, is interesting, because I do not know how clearly defined and decided it already is who is going to take the door and who is going to leave the spot. Because you have 3 players, right? You have Borup, you have Buzz, and you have Stair. 2 of these are arguably going to lose their spot. I don't know how decided this is. And I don't know if they know how decided this is. So you kind of find yourself in a super high pressure environment where uncertainty is all around. And this is basically the worst you can have as a professional, is not knowing what's going to be made of tomorrow. Are you going to lose your spot? What's the level of communication that's happening? Because Astralis famously doesn't really have a great communication between like the top level management and the players. Yes. Sometimes they just tell you like, I have no idea what the hell is going on. We don't know. I mean, famously they announced, I still think it was criminal to announce the signing of Stair in Dallas while their players are doing great. And then you announce a signing as your players are moving into the playoff. I think it's criminal. So that's an example where there was definitely some missteps being taken in that kind of the top-down communication. So I don't know how the players feel, but what I do know is that, once again, all that Borup, Stair, and Buzz can do right now is improve their social credit in Counter-Strike and prove that they can, in fact, play the game at a higher level than what we've seen before. And whether fighting for their spot in Astralis or making them more attractive for other teams after that, I have no idea. I don't know. From a role standpoint, it does feel like maybe Stair's coming to life is a little bit too late, because there are some role clashes with Yabby and with BlameF, and you would have to think he would have to be more defensive than he'd want to be, probably. So that's another issue.
Shall I tell you what my fear is, Maniac? If I had to guess between the 3, like, look, obviously the Stair one's the idea. He is like a newer player. They did just get him. They took a while. Maybe they want him for that reason. Let's be real. The Buzz guy is just the most obviously replaceable player, because no one knows him. He's just a nobody. My fear is this, Maniac, is that it's that Borup will be the one they'll keep. And the reason I say that is this, is because if you think where they are in their career, I think Borup will just essentially say, I'll just play whatever role you want. Like, he'll just be the bait or the meat or whatever you want him to do. He'll probably just do that role. And they all know him. He's like, if people don't know, because he's been around the scene many, many years. He's a known quantity. It won't probably add drama, I'd imagine, I worry about that, because I'd rather you gamble on like a Stair or a Buzz or something. I'd rather go with that angle if we're going to have these established players,
I think Buzz has shown great improvement ever since he first put on the Astralis jersey, and the beginning was obviously very shaky.
Of course.
I do think he's been much better now, so he might have just bought enough confidence and trust from his teammates. And I also hope that Astralis do not take that boat that you're talking about, because yes, it does make everyone else comfortable when you have a player that's willing to sacrifice and just take all the shit positions, and so everybody can shine. But there is a reality in which players like Impact, players like Robs, players like Magisk, they're showing you that strong anchors are
for sure.
in the conditions of a winning team. Like, you can't just have someone that's a free kill on a bomb site. It's impossible. So I would personally hope they keep either Buzz or Stair. I do wonder if Stair does not need a little bit too much freedom in order to thrive. And I don't think the thing is when you bring in Stone in Yabi with Blamef and Device, whoever is the number 5 spot is not going to get a whole lot of autonomy nor space. That's just a reality. That you have some players that require priority. Obviously, Device as an opera has to have the all power of where he wants to go. Blamef famously is going to set him up for success, but he does deliver, so who am I to complain? That's great. And then even Stone, you have to cater to Stone's need. Like, you know what he can provide as a player. You can't just box him in a place. So basically, Yabi is going to have to be a team player. And the 5th, whoever this is going to have to be just plugging leaks here and there and play these kind of role positions. So I don't know who from Buzz and Stair would do that best. I tend towards Buzz based on what we have seen. But I am really, really, really interested. And one of the most attractive, sort of intellectually attractive topic of this whole conversation is, are these two sort of mentality of Counter-Strike be able to mesh? Because Heroic and Astralis do play diametrically different Counter-Strike. The Cadian school of thoughts and the Blamer school of thoughts as a leader, or the Devices time in Astralis, these are as opposed as you can possibly be. So these are very strong players that, if they can actually find a way to see eye to eye and do agree on how they play Counter-Strike, could be very, very powerful. And I just want to introduce like a topic that's something that I've been thinking about recently. Is, we use the term chemistry a lot on the desk, and we talk about chemistry and like, oh, these players, they're meshing together. I've started to think about chemistry in a more of a divided way, which is you have person's chemistry and you have task chemistry, which is just how the team is actually functioning at the task that they're supposed to do.
Sure.
And whether or not they're going to have people chemistry, I don't know. I don't know if these players are going to mesh together. I don't know if you're going to form any kind of bonds or relationship, which obviously are important in the success of a team and has been proven many times in different sports. But I do think that there can be a task chemistry where all of them can look at each other and say, holy shit, like we have the pieces. Like, let's make this work. Like, we can be winning right now. We can be beyond the whole, I want to be the superstar and I want you to flash for me. No, like winning is what matters. Winning is what supersedes everything. And this quad that we're talking about is one that is interesting to see and intriguing to see, and I really hope that it works out just for Counter-Strike. Because I remain an eternal Device fanboy personally. I'll always be a fan of Device. I would love to see this core fight for playoffs and work out. I would really like that.
The funny thing is, when this move even was announced, obviously as part of that drama of like Cadian leaving and then they benched these players, and people found out like, wait a minute, these two were going to go to Astralis, or they are going to, or it's supposed to happen, etc. Funny thing is, I think initially I wasn't that hyped actually for a few reasons. Like, one, the problem obviously is it means I have to give up Heroic, and Heroic are already really good. It's like the magic box thing again from earlier. It's like, why would I hope I can get a team like Heroic? I had Heroic, like I don't need them. But so once I've got past that, then the other thing for me, I made this point on a past show, was just, to me, it just shows how you don't let players pick the players, because it's like, pick the other two riflers. Like, if I'm Dermot and Device, like, it's actually Shush and fucking Tessus that would fit my team. Like, we have the roles sorted tomorrow if we do that lineup. Instead, like you say, what you've done is you've taken Blamef and Device. We're the two players who clearly get everything we want in Astralis currently, and then we've taken Yabi and Stown, who I'm going to speculate are probably the players who had the game set up for them in Heroic, and now we're trying to mash them in a team where, as you point out, they can't be 4-star players. Like, they're literally, it would be hilarious to imagine one support player can somehow like support 4 people at once. Like, I think we've gone too far when we're doing that. Yeah. So there is that angle. But my point is that, yeah, as you say, essentially someone's going to have to like humble their ego and probably take a lesser role or give up space and resources. And by the way, as a result, probably see their numbers tank. So at that point, you have to believe you're going to win. You have to believe it's going to be a great concept. So, but the thing I've realized is this: even though I think there is massive uncertainty, I actually am excited, because I've realised this is like the Danish version of what Cloud9 did, Maniac, where when they announced the Electronic Perfector additions, it was the same thing. On paper, it was like, well, wait a minute, these are like 4 of the best players you can get. If somehow, the key word there is if, is doing all the heavy lifting. If this can work, you just imagining all 4 of those players playing great together. I think it's the same thing with this lineup. Like, when I look at the lineup, what scares me is I've never been a big Blame FIGL fan, and the 5th player, like we're saying, is totally uncertain and probably going to be a weak spot potentially anyway, unless it's one of the younger guys and they develop. So already it's not like a sorted lineup. But essentially, as much as I don't know how they can do it and what it would even look like, I do think the prospect is exciting though, because one thing I do think of is the biggest complaint I always did have about Heroic was sometimes I did think they had like a tiny little bit not enough firepower, because a lot of they had like a very well balanced team, but you can see the team did play off like great calls, teamwork, utility usage. Occasionally you'd have a Stown carry performance or a big KD, but in general you didn't expect that. In fact, that wasn't sort of one of the check marks on the win conditions. You didn't need that in that team. In this team, this could be a Danish team with serious firepower. Like, I'm just thinking of that prospect. Like, dude, it's been years since we've had a squad like that. Like, Denmark, obviously, traditionally, just known for the team play and the tactics. We could actually have a lineup here that just bangs out. Like, because again, like I say, I don't know what the if factor is, but if I'm going to have a team, bro, where for real, my third and fourth best players might be Stown and Yabi, you can see a world where that could be a really fucking exciting, dangerous team in CS.
I agree with you, and that's why I'm excited for it too. I also think you talk about the Blamef leadership abilities. I don't think he's proven quite yet that he's a trophy lifting IGL. And again, I'm harping on the term IGL here, because when it comes to individual output, he's one of the most fragging IGL we have.
He's mega, yeah.
That's just it. Like he remains incredible individually, whether or not you want to tag him as Bader or whatever this is. He is one of the strongest CT we ever have in a circuit. That's it. And he has a very strong ability to finish rounds. So that's it. But what I would like to see, if this or when and if this roster change happens, is that I do think a little bit of the craziness and the spice that Heroic had in their DNA would be needed in Astralis. Because Blamef to me seems more like a logical, methodological IGL where, hey, this is situation A should call for reaction B, and reaction B should lead us to situation C, and this is how we're going to win. And it's all great on paper, and some of that is needed in Counter-Strike. You do need to have sort of patterns, and you need to try and optimize numbers and positions and all. That's great. That's part of the game. But if you want to win, you also need to be able to get dirty, like get down to it, take risks, have calls that maybe don't necessarily make sense at the time, but this is the moment where you need to hit you with the uppercut. Things that famously Snappy and Kerrigan have become immensely good at. Just hitting you with that strategy that maybe on paper isn't necessarily the most rationalized and optimized strategy, but is just going to knock you out. If it works out, that's it. That's a knockout. The game is over. I haven't seen Blamef have that. I think Blamef calls a sound, stable, logical Counter-Strike, and it's only going to get you that far. You need that little bit of element of craziness, and Heroic, on the other side, they had too much of that. Heroic had way too much of the crazy, spicy, fireworky Counter-Strike, and they sometimes lacked a little bit of sort of discipline and logic in the choices that they were making. So if you can have the best of both worlds, where you can have Stown and Yabi kind of come in and say, hey, listen, these were some of the crazy things we were doing. Like, I really think it's important that we have that in our gameplay. And then if Blamef as an IGL and Astralis as a team is ready to welcome some of that, my fear is that they're going to say, hey, listen, guys, welcome to Astralis. Put the jersey on. You're now an Astralis player.
Yes.
This is how we do things. Great to have you here. I'm the leader. That's it. Of course, he has to remain in control, but I really hope that they would welcome these players and say, okay, guys, what was working in Heroic?
Yes.
What can you give us from your way of looking at the game? Because I personally, I have the logic and the probabilities and all that. I have it down to a T. I know how to do it. But tell me a little bit about the crazy stuff you were doing, and let's mesh something together. That's what I hope would happen for this lineup.
I've got an angle for you here, actually. So if people don't know, right now, as we speak, the League of Legends World Championship is going on. And in the League of Legends World Championship, Faker, who's probably the most famous player ever from League of Legends, obviously, like, he'd won the championship many times before, he's in the final again, right? And what happened this year was we had a very rare time where you get a chance to actually, like, as you say, A/B test, like, what is the impact of a player on his team? Because what happened was, in the summer, he had, like, a wrist injury, and he had to leave his team for, like, a bunch of weeks. And at the time, you have to realize Faker himself isn't actually, like, essentially he was once like the simple of League of Legends, but that was like 7 years ago now. What's amazing now is it's more like a Dupree thing. It's like, it's just longevity of still being able to compete, and it's like, just do something for the team, like help in some way. Well, what it turns out is, because as an actual raw mid laner and like best player in the server, he hasn't been that for years. Like, even in his team, he's not the person who's supposed to carry the game. Everyone understandably thought, right, well, maybe actually he should just be replaced, that maybe he's not that good. Well, what happened was, in these weeks where he was injured and he couldn't play and they had to put put like a rookie in, essentially it wasn't just that the rookie played bad in mid lane, the whole team collapsed, dude. Like it turned out he was maybe making like shot calls or things about how he positioned were making the other players comfortable enough that they were then doing their job and looking world class. And so literally almost the entire team, piece by piece, just sort of fell apart. Then he came back. This is why it's like a movie. Like I said, it's almost like an actual scientific experiment. Then he came back, and after a couple of games, they got right back to a good level. They made a run to the finals, and now they're in the finals of Worlds itself, like months later. So you can see an example of how, like, what we're talking about here. Because to me, wait a second. Where was I going with this whole point though?
We're talking about Astralis, Yabi and Stone. So I don't know if they're supposed to be that kind of piece in that puzzle.
Where was I going with this? Oh, no, that was it. Yes, that was the point I was going to make. Yes, that was it. It was about heroic. Because I think actually the interesting thing about the experiment of Yabi and Stone completely leaving the org and now going, like you say, to a team where the interesting factor here is I agree with you. In theory, the smartest convo you could have in Astralis now goes like this. They come in, Yabi and Stown, and Blame F and Device go, hey, like, I know, like, obviously, Device has won a lot of championship, but actually, you guys were the ones that were on top at the moment. Like, what are you doing that works in the game? What do we not see about the current meta, or how did he do against us in this? That would be a great angle. Obviously, the fear is that if you have people like Device, I mean, they're a mega veteran, they could just be like, well, I know how it's done. You're going to do it my way. I agree with that convo. But the other part to me is, I think we're going to get a chance to actually see how impactful was Cadian on those two heroic players, because I've never seen those players be amazing outside of Cadian's teams. They were like, Stow was decent when he was on like teams like Frags and stuff, and then the Yabi guy, he was half as good on Copenhagen Flames. I thought he was okay, but he wasn't this good. Like, mate, the guy who joined this heroic and was winning all those clutches, like, he looked way better. Like, that eye test wasn't there for me. So the problem I always actually did think they had in heroic, it's one of the reasons why me and Maui are both on that train of, like, I think Cadian over-egged the pudding, and because I always thought he actually did. And by the way, my boy Carrigan's done this too. I think they did put too much of the weight on their shoulders specifically, because they understood Maniac that, like, yeah, I'm going to get blamed, but also if I make the call that wins, I get the credit though. Like, people are going to know I did it. That was my call. And I know what you mean about the heroic angle. The one flaw I always thought they had, this is why I say I critique the firepower a bit. They weren't doing anything wrong with how they played, but it did sometimes feel like for the number one team, they did seem to like try to gimmick people a lot in the rounds, if you know, like so much of their T side was like tricking you, or like CT was like a super fast rotation, like just gamble on it or whatever. Like, actually, you're right. Like, the best teams ever, they're more like bread and butter CS. It's more like, right, we'll just play the basics and then maybe we throw a bit of that in, because that's what I'm going to wait and see now. Like, I think if Stown or Yabi don't end up looking good in this team, it actually probably increases Cadian's stock, like I say about the Faker example. Like, I think it'll actually make people think, well, actually, it's probably the fear if you're those players, which is, did Cadian make them to some degree? Obviously, he didn't control their mouse, but so much of that team, it's not as simple as when people go, you were the heart of the team. They usually mean spiritually or emotionally in that sense. I think it seems like in every sense this guy was the heart of the team. Like, everything that happened from minute one to the end in heroic was somehow involving Cadian. So I also want to see, how do these guys sort of do outside of the nest, Maniac? Like, they have to fly solo to some degree now. In fact, as you even said there, the other concern I have is, this reminds me of when in football, really good players from a domestic scene choose to go abroad. Like, an English player might go to La Liga or Serie A. Sometimes the reason it doesn't work is exactly like what we're talking about. It's like you walk into a different world. Like, if you go into an AC Milan dressing room, they aren't doing that convo we just talked. So how were things working when you were in the Premier League? They're going to be like, hey, like, put your jersey on. You play for AC Milan now. This is what we do. Go out there and win. And if you can't do it, by the way, we'll get someone else in. We're not going to, torture us. Like, what's going on with you? We'll just replace you. We'll get the guy in who can do that job. So if your people are, there's the other angle I'm just going to throw it at the end for Stown and Yabi. In heroic, considering they were an org with amazing results, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of pressure on you. Dude, there's pressure in Astralis. Like, let's call up fucking the speed dial for Farley and fucking Bobsky and those guys. Ask them what it's like to play. Lockie. No one even remembers these guys. Some of them, like, there's a lot of pressure when you're in Astralis. And also, quite frankly, I don't think people like Device. This is an angle that people maybe don't know about the old Astralis. They're not all just like the loveliest people ever. Like, they're also like, they can be harsh in their own way. They're ruthless. They want to win. Like, if someone like, if you play with Device and you shit for 6 months, he's not going to just keep patting you on the shoulder and go get him next time. Eventually, he's going to go get this guy out here and get someone in here who can win, like the AC Milan example I give. So I just have a few concerns in that sense. Like, I think what people are doing, like I pointed out previously, is they're just looking at like the numbers of what you could do if you were down, and they're thinking it plugs into Astralis. Whereas I don't know, maybe it does. If it does, awesome. But if it doesn't, I could see it going the other way really hard too, mate.
No, I agree with you. I think these are very warranted worries about this roster. And it's also another final angle to this. Also heroic. When I look at a team, I have this continuum in my head versus it's team on one hand and it's individual on the other, right? And I think heroic, out of all of the teams that we had at the very top game, were one of the most grouped, sort of cannibalized team, right? Your identity as a player sort of kind of erodes, and you are a heroic player. That's who you are. It's Cadian out there as a captain, and then it's his squad. You are heroic, and we are playing the heroic Counter-Strike. And then when Cadian was talking about it on an interview, he said that's the brief that we give to all the new players. We say, hey guys, you've come to heroic now. We do the things heroic way. This has obvious benefits and positive. The relationship between the players is much tighter. People are looking at a common goal and they have common ways to do things and they see eye to eye. That's great. These are the positives. The negatives are when you need these individuals to step up and defy sort of the odds of the round, it becomes a little bit harder because some of that responsibility is kind of diluted into the whole, well, it's heroic. We're heroic. We lose some, we win some. We do everything as a team. There is a healthy dose of ownership as an individual that you need to have in your losses and in your wins. It cannot just always be the system. You can always say we won as a team, we lose as a team. There's a healthy amount of, hey, I messed up.
Yes.
I should have done better and I will do better next. And this is where we're gonna figure out how much of that individual ownership Yabi and Stalin can claim. Like, can you be more than just a piece in that heroic machine that Cadian put together? Can you actually have that amount of individuality in order to shine in a new system? Because honestly, I feel like FaZe is probably one of the few teams that has managed to have the best of both worlds, which is they do have an identity. They are FaZe. There's no doubt. If you and I, we need to describe the FaZe playstyle, we can. They have an identity that we can sort of define. But at the same time, their individuals have remained sort of untethered from the whole FaZe gestalt, and they can still be individuals, and Robs will always be Robs, and Brokey has his own Brokey way of playing, and Rain is super aggressive. They've maintained that, and it's really hard to find. I think heroic, the individuals kind of were meshed into sort of a smoothie of players, and that smoothie was not that bad. I mean, they did have great results, but we needed individuals to kind of punch through these lines. It wasn't happening. So that's, if I'm Yabi, if I'm Stalin, these are some of the lessons that you have to draw from that heroic adventure, because not everything was negative. Hell no. Heroic was a great team, one of the greatest team that we had in CSGO for a long time. They were contenders for titles. They went to grand finals. They were doing a lot right. It's not about just pissing on their legacy, absolutely not. But you have to learn from whatever it was that didn't go your way, and now you're being gifted possibly a very interesting new chapter with one of the most, if not the most tenured and successful player in the history of Denmark, and the individually strongest IGL we have in the circuit. That's a great opportunity you've been given. So learn from whatever did not work in heroic, because on paper, I think the pieces are here for some sort of success.
And by the way, the other thing as well that does lurk behind this is it's such a bummer that there's not even any rumours that anyone joins fucking Heroic, dude. Like, where are all those leaks? Like, surely they're going to have some players and have a fucking professional team. Like, it's wild. Like, that's the one part of the equation that no one else seems to be focused on. Like, where are all the moves there? Like, why am I not hearing for real rumours like Huxley joins, or if FaZe breaks up, Carrigan joins? Like, I need to hear something soon, Heroic. Like, the joke is, if you're Heroic, you should bloody leak something. Like, we need some reason to believe this is going to be a real team, not just like Dupree getting 3 months of salary or some shit like that.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.